she stepped off the dusty stagecoach, heart pounding with hope, only to find a trail of blood leading to her groom's ranch. The wagon had been ambushed, and he was gone. Alone in a brutal land, she faced a choice: flee back to nothing or claim the dream they built together. With nothing but grit and a pistol, she made her stand. But who really orchestrated the massacre? And would they come for her next? Before we dive in, tell me where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow's episode is even more incredible. The desert stretched endlessly before her, a cracked and broken sea of dust and bone. Clara Whitlock clutched the small carpet bag to her chest as the stagecoach lurched to a stop in the sweltering heat of early afternoon. Sweat trickled down the side of her face, but she didn't wipe it away. Every ounce of her strength was focused on not running. Back to the coach, back to the east, back to the life she had fled. At 22, Clara already carried more ghosts than most. Her father's debts, her mother's slow death, the suitors who smiled sweet and struck hard when no one was looking. Marrying a man she had never met might sound like madness to some, but for Clara, it had been a chance at salvation. Henry Caldwell's letters had promised a new start, a ranch to call her own, wide open skies, and a partner who would treat her like an equal. She had clung to those letters like a raft in stormy waters. Now, staring at the blood-streaked dirt road leading to Caldwell Ranch, Clara felt that raft splinter beneath her feet. The ranch was a skeleton of what had been promised. Half-burned wagons littered the front yard. The corral gate hung open, horses gone. Buzzards circled lazily in the sky. And worst of all, no welcoming party, no Henry. Only the sheriff, a man named Eli Dorsey, who spat tobacco into the dirt and told her grimly, "Ambush, nothing left but blood and ghosts." Yet Clara didn't cry. She didn't faint like the heroine of some dime novel. She squared her shoulders, pressed the worn brim of her hat down against the sun, and said simply, "Show me where he fell." Eli hesitated, seeing something in her eyes that gave even him pause. It wasn't anger or grief exactly. It was a cold, calculating resolve, like a woman who had decided she had nothing left to lose. The town of Perdition, New Mexico, where Henry had built his homestead, was barely more than a handful of wooden shanties around a cracked well. In the distance, the Sierra Diablo Mountains loomed like jagged teeth. Bandits roamed these parts. Former Confederate soldiers turned outlaws, Mexican raiders driven north by famine, desperate men who didn't care who they hurt. There were whispers, too, of uneasy truces breaking between settlers and the native tribes who had been pushed off their ancestral lands. Clara was no fool. She knew the political tension here was as thick as the dust in the air. Every handshake could turn into a gunfight. Every promise could unravel with the next bad harvest. She met a few of the town's remaining souls that day. Old Maud, the barkeep with a sharp tongue and a sharper shotgun under the counter. Young Jesse, a runaway farm boy working odd jobs, who seemed to hover near Clara like a stray pup. Father Anselm, the stoop-shouldered priest, whose sermons had more fire and brimstone than comfort. Each one had a look when they spoke to Clara, a flicker of pity, maybe even guilt. None of them told her to stay. None offered help. That night, Clara sat alone on the sagging porch of the ranch house, staring into the endless desert. The stars burned low and bright, and the coyotes howled like mourning women. She traced the small, jagged scar on her wrist, hidden under the cuff of her dress, a reminder of promises broken, and the reason she would never again put her fate in anyone else's hands. Somewhere out there, the men who killed Henry still roamed free. Maybe they thought the ranch would fall into ruin without its master. Maybe they thought a little mail-order bride wouldn't cause them any trouble. They would soon learn otherwise. In the morning, Clara would bury the past with her own hands. She would stake her claim. And when they came back, because she knew they would, she'd be ready. The desert didn't forgive weakness, and neither would she. The morning sun rose like a hammer over perdition, casting long, brutal shadows across the ranch. Clara rolled up the sleeves of her worn dress, hands blistered and aching from swinging a pickaxe into the dry earth. She had spent the last hours digging a grave, one for Henry and one for the future she had come to claim. She wasn't alone for long. A crunch of boots on gravel made her head snap up. 3 men approached, riding hard and deliberate. They weren't townsfolk. No familiar faces, no pretense of neighborly concern. Dust clung to their ragged coats, pistols hung easy at their hips. The leader, a tall man with a crooked nose and a scar that ran from ear to jaw, tipped his hat lazily as he dismounted. "Well now," he drawled, voice slick as oil. "Ain't this a sight? Little lady setting up house all by her lonesome." Clara said nothing. She tightened her grip on the pickaxe handle, her heart pounding hard enough to echo in her ears. The leader stepped closer, eyes raking over the battered ranch house, the broken corral, and finally resting on Clara herself. "Name's Silas Ward," he said. "I used to do a little business with old Henry. Shame what happened. Real shame. See, Henry owed me a bit of a debt before he passed. And debts, ma'am, well, they don't just vanish." He smiled, revealing a row of yellow teeth. His men chuckled low and mean behind him. Clara straightened her spine. "Henry didn't mention you in any of his letters." Silas shrugged, unbothered. "Reckon he wouldn't. Smart fella, but desperate. Land out here don't pay for itself. Livestock's gone. Fences are busted. You think you're gonna fix all that by yourself?" She could smell it now. Trouble. The kind that didn't leave, unless forced. "What do you want?" she asked. Silas' grin widened. "Simple. You sell the ranch to me. Cheap, considering circumstances. Then you go back east or wherever you came from. No harm done. And if I say no," Silas's smile vanished like smoke on the wind. His hand rested on the butt of his gun. "Wouldn't be wise, ma'am. Might find yourself all alone out here, with nothing but bones for company." Behind him, one of his men, young, nervous, shifted his weight. Clara caught the flash of doubt in his eyes. Maybe not all of them were monsters, but Silas was enough. Her mind raced. She had nothing. No family, no allies. The nearest law was a day's ride away, and judging from the sheriff's tired eyes, no real help would come even if she begged for it. But Clara Whitlock had learned long ago. When cornered, you don't plead, you don't surrender, you fight. She smiled sweetly. "I'll think about it." Silas tipped his hat again, mockingly. "Good girl. We'll be back tomorrow. Don't keep us waiting." They mounted up and rode off, leaving a storm of dust in their wake. Clara watched them go, chest tight with fury and fear. She knew what tomorrow meant. It wasn't an offer. It was an ultimatum. Inside the ranch house, Clara opened Henry's old trunk. Beneath layers of clothes and papers, her fingers found what she was looking for. A revolver, heavy and cold in her hand. Not much, but it was a start. Beside it, wrapped in oilcloth, was something even more surprising. A letter addressed to my wife, Clara. Hands trembling, she unfolded the parchment. Henry's handwriting was rushed, the ink blotched. If you're reading this, something's gone wrong. I had no choice but to make certain deals to keep the ranch alive. Watch your back. Trust no one in perdition, not even the ones who smile. A sound at the window made Clara start. She whirled, gun raised. But it was only Jesse, the boy from town, pressing his face against the glass. They're coming back tonight, he hissed. Not tomorrow. Silas, don't leave loose ends. Clara's blood turned to ice. Tonight, she had less than a handful of hours to turn a crumbling ranch into a fortress, or it would be her blood soaking into the dust before morning. The night fell heavy and thick over the desert. Clara crouched in the broken shadows of the ranch house, the revolver trembling slightly in her hand. Every cracked floorboard, every gust of wind across the yard sounded like footsteps. She had pushed barrels against doors, laid a few rusty bear traps near the porch, and hidden a sharpened pitchfork behind the main room's broken door. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. She was not a woman of violence. Yet here she was, ready to kill, to survive. She wondered if Henry had felt the same terror before they cut him down. The thought stiffened her resolve. Jesse slipped into the house through a broken side window, his skinny frame hardly making a sound. He carried a battered shotgun, the barrel too long for his arms. They're coming from the East Ridge, he whispered. 2, maybe 3 riders. I seen them lighting torches. Her stomach twisted. They weren't just coming to scare her. They meant to burn her out, or worse. We can't stay here, Jesse said. They'll corner us easy. We gotta move. Clara hesitated. Leaving meant giving up the ranch, maybe forever. It meant abandoning the last dream Henry had left her. But staying meant dying. All right, she said, jaw tight. We'll go west, toward the canyons. We can lose them there. The two slipped into the night, keeping low to the ground, hearts hammering in their ears. Clara didn't look back. She didn't dare. They fled across the hardpan, the stars overhead, smeared by dust and smoke. Gunshots cracked behind them, wild and cruel. Jesse stumbled once, his thin legs giving out, and Clara hauled him up without a word. Survival had no space for weakness. They reached the first line of scrub and jagged rocks by dawn. Exhausted, Clara dropped to her knees, breathing hard. Jesse slumped against a boulder, face pale. That's when a low, mocking voice floated from behind a ridge. Well, now what do we have here? Silas Ward and his men stepped from the shadows, guns drawn. Clara felt the world tilt. They had been herded like cattle. You didn't think you could outrun me, did you? Silas sneered. I gave you a fair choice, girl. Should have taken it. Clara lifted the revolver, but a boot slammed into her wrist, sending it skittering into the dirt. Silas loomed over her, shadow long and cruel. Now, he said, let's talk about how you're gonna pay what's owed. Before he could strike, a shot rang out. Silas staggered back, blood blooming on his sleeve. Another figure emerged from the rocks. Sheriff Eli Dorsey, rifle in hand. What the hell is this? Silas, Eli barked. Running women off their land now. Silas's lip curled. Stay out of this, Dorsey. Ain't none of your business. It is now, the sheriff growled. Perdition's got enough blood on its hands without you adding more. Tension crackled in the air like a coming storm. Silas weighed his odds. 2 against 4. He clicked his tongue and signaled his men to fall back. This ain't over, Missy. He spat at Clara. You're just delaying the inevitable. They disappeared into the rocks, leaving Clara and Jessie gasping in the dust. Eli turned to Clara, his face unreadable. You got any idea what Henry really got himself into? Clara shook her head, heart still racing. Well, Eli said, voice grim, you better find out fast. 'Cause Silas Ward wasn't the only man Henry owed. He helped Jessie to his feet, but when he offered a hand to Clara, she hesitated. Something about Eli didn't sit right. Too convenient, him showing up at the perfect moment. Too much knowledge about debts and deals. Trust no one, Henry had written. Even the ones who smile. Over. The next days, Clara, Jessie, and Eli traveled deeper into the wilderness, dodging patrols and surviving off meager supplies. Clara's blistered feet and aching muscles were nothing compared to the constant strain of vigilance. Sleep became a rare luxury. Trust became an impossible dream. Still, in quiet moments, she caught Jessie glancing at her with wide, uncertain eyes, not just fear, but loyalty. And once, when she nearly fell crossing a crumbling ravine, Eli caught her wrist with a firm, calloused hand. Their eyes met, an instant, a heartbeat, before she yanked away. Emotions were dangerous. They softened the mind, made you careless. She could not afford to be careless. One night, camped in a ravine with their fire smothered low, Clara overheard Jessie whispering to Eli, voice shaking. You gonna tell her? Eli didn't answer for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was a low growl. Not yet. She's not ready. Clara lay still, breathing shallow, her mind racing. Tell her what? The next morning, Clara demanded answers. What is it you're hiding from me? She asked Eli, her voice cold. He met her gaze evenly. You deserve to know, but it ain't simple. Try me. Eli sighed and ran a hand through his graying hair. Henry wasn't just in debt. He was part of something bigger. Smuggling weapons, running messages. There's people out there, real powerful people, who think you know where he hid their goods. Clara's blood turned to ice. I don't know anything. They ain't gonna believe that, Eli said. Not Silas, not the men riding behind him. A betrayal deepened in her gut. Henry had written promises of love and a new life, all the while dragging her into a war she never agreed to fight. Clara looked at Jessie, whose face was pale with guilt. You knew too, she whispered. The boy flinched. I overheard Henry talking once, swore I'd never tell. I was scared. I still am. Clara turned away, fury battling despair. All the letters, the dreams. They were lies, tools to pull her into a deadly game she hadn't even known she was playing. Yet even through the anger, something fierce began to burn inside her. She would not run. She would not hide. If they thought she was a pawn, they had made a deadly mistake. Clara, Whitlock would not break. And when the hunters came, she would be ready to make them bleed. The desert wind howled like a living thing, rattling loose stones and sending tumbleweeds skittering across the cracked earth. Clara, Jessie, and Eli pressed forward. their destination clear now, an abandoned mission at the edge of the canyons, where Henry had supposedly hidden whatever it was Silas and the others wanted so badly. Every mile tightened the knot in Clara's gut. She could feel it. Something was wrong. Eli had grown quieter, more watchful. Jessie barely met her eyes. At midday, they stopped to rest in a dry riverbed, the heat pressing down like a smothering hand. As Clara dug in her pack for a strip of jerky, Eli spoke, voice low and flat. "We need to talk." Clara straightened, every muscle tense. "You said Henry was smuggling," she said. "I get that, but you're not telling me everything. Are you?" Eli's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he said, "Henry wasn't just smuggling guns. He was smuggling people." The words hit harder than any bullet. Clara's mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" "Runaways, refugees, wanted men." He was part of a network, a kind of underground railroad for criminals and deserters. Some good folks, some not. "And you knew," she whispered. Eli's eyes were grim. "I helped him. Sometimes. Looked the other way, when needed." Clara struggled to breathe. Everything she thought she knew about Henry, about why she was here, shattered in an instant. "You brought me out here knowing all this," she hissed. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Eli said. "Henry planned to get out, start fresh, with you. But before he could, someone betrayed him, sold him out." Clara's hands curled into fists. "Who?" Eli's gaze flicked to Jessie, and in that terrible moment, Clara understood. "No," she said, voice shaking. "Not him." Jessie's face crumpled. Tears welled in his wide eyes. "I didn't mean to. I swear. They promised they wouldn't hurt him. I just told them about the mission. I didn't know they'd kill him." The boy collapsed to his knees, sobbing into the dust. Betrayal burned through Clara like wildfire. Jessie, the boy she had protected, trusted, had delivered Henry to his death, and maybe her too. She turned away, throat tight with rage and heartbreak. But there was no time for grief. Gunfire erupted from the canyon rim. Clara threw herself flat as bullets tore into the dry riverbed. Silas Ward's men appeared like specters, rifles flashing in the sun. They had been followed, maybe for days. "We're pinned," Eli shouted, dragging Jessie behind a rock. Clara crawled to the nearest cover, heart pounding. The dry air reeked of gunpowder and sweat. Stones shattered around her as bullets struck. Across the riverbed, Clara spotted Silas himself, standing atop a ridge, shouting orders. "No survivors," he bellowed. "Bring me the girl. We need her alive." Clara gritted her teeth. She wasn't going to die here. Not for Henry's sins, not for Jessie's mistakes. She took a deep breath and did something she hadn't done since the night she left the East. She trusted her instincts. Moving fast, she belly crawled toward an overhang of rock, signaling to Eli with a sharp nod. He understood immediately, drawing fire toward himself as Clara and Jessie made a break for it. The climb was brutal, the rock face cutting into Clara's palms. Jessie scrambled behind her, his small body nimble despite the fear slowing his steps. Gunfire crackled like thunder around them. A bullet clipped Clara's sleeve, searing a line of pain across her arm. But she didn't stop. At the top, the desert stretched wide and empty, and in the distance, the crumbling spires of the old mission. Freedom "Run," she gasped to Jesse, shoving him forward. But just as they crested the ridge, a shadow fell over them. Silas. He stood there, revolver aimed squarely at Clara's heart, a cold smile on his lips. "Thought you could outsmart me, little lady." Jesse froze, terror locking his limbs. Clara raised her hands slowly, mind racing. "Silas, you need me alive," she said carefully. "You said it yourself." He chuckled. "Alive, sure. Doesn't mean you gotta be in one piece." Behind him, more riders emerged, cutting off any hope of escape. For the first time, Clara realized the full depth of the trap. This wasn't about Henry's debt. This was bigger, organized, ruthless. They didn't just want the ranch. They wanted everything Henry had built, everyone he had protected. And she was the last thread tying it all together. A low rumble filled the air. Clara frowned, at first thinking it was thunder, but then the ground shuddered beneath her boots. From the distant mission, a plume of smoke rose, and with it, a second group of riders charging toward the riverbed. Newcomers. One wore a black duster, a silver badge flashing in the sunlight. Another, a tall woman with a Winchester rifle slung across her back. Reinforcements. But were they allies, or another kind of enemy? The desert wind howled like a living thing, rattling loose stones and sending tumbleweeds skittering across the cracked earth. Clara, Jesse, and Eli pressed forward, their destination clear now. An abandoned mission at the edge of the canyons, where Henry had supposedly hidden whatever it was Silas and the others wanted so badly. Every mile tightened the knot in Clara's gut. She could feel it. Something was wrong. Eli had grown quieter, more watchful. Jesse barely met her eyes. At midday, they stopped to rest in a dry riverbed, the heat pressing down like a smothering hand. As Clara dug in her pack for a strip of jerky, Eli spoke, voice low and flat. "We need to talk." Clara straightened, every muscle tense. "You said Henry was smuggling," she said. "I get that. But you're not telling me everything. Are you?" Eli's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he said, "Henry wasn't just smuggling guns. He was smuggling people." The words hit harder than any bullet. Clara's mouth went dry. "What are you talking about?" "Runaways, refugees, wanted men." He was part of a network, a kind of underground railroad for criminals and deserters. Some good folks, some not. "And you knew," she whispered. Eli's eyes were grim. "I helped him. Sometimes. Looked the other way. When needed." Clara struggled to breathe. Everything she thought she knew about Henry, about why she was here, shattered in an instant. "You brought me out here knowing all this," she hissed. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," Eli said. "Henry planned to get out, start fresh, with you. But before he could, someone betrayed him, sold him out." Claire's hands curled into fists. "Who?" Eli's gaze flicked to Jesse, and in that terrible moment, Clara understood. "No," she said, voice shaking. "Not him." Jesse's face crumpled. Tears welled in his wide eyes. "I didn't mean to. I swear. They promised they wouldn't hurt him. I just told them about the mission. I didn't know they'd kill him." The boy collapsed to his knees, sobbing into the dust. Betrayal burned through Clara like wildfire. Jesse, the boy she had protected, trusted, had delivered Henry to his death, and maybe her too. She turned away, throat tight with rage and heartbreak. But there was no time for grief. Gunfire erupted from the canyon rim. Clara threw herself flat as bullets tore into the dry riverbed. Silas Ward's men appeared like specters, rifles flashing in the sun. They had been followed, maybe for days. "We're pinned," Eli shouted, dragging Jesse behind a rock. Clara crawled to the nearest cover, heart pounding. The dry air reeked of gunpowder and sweat. Stones shattered around her as bullets struck. Across the riverbed, Clara spotted Silas himself, standing atop a ridge, shouting orders. "No survivors," he bellowed. "Bring me the girl. We need her alive." Clara gritted her teeth. She wasn't going to die here. Not for Henry's sins, not for Jesse's mistakes. She took a deep breath and did something she hadn't done since the night she left to the east. She trusted her instincts. Moving fast, she belly crawled toward an overhang of rock, signaling to Eli with a sharp nod. He understood immediately, drawing fire toward himself as Clara and Jesse made a break for it. The climb was brutal, the rock face cutting into Clara's palms. Jesse scrambled behind her, his small body nimble despite the fear slowing his steps. Gunfire crackled like thunder around them. A bullet clipped Clara's sleeve, searing a line of pain across her arm. But she didn't stop. At the top, the desert stretched wide and empty, and in the distance, the crumbling spires of the old mission. Freedom. "Run," she gasped to Jesse, shoving him forward. But just as they crested the ridge, a shadow fell over them. Silas. He stood there, revolver aimed squarely at Clara's heart, a cold smile on his lips. "Thought you could outsmart me, little lady." Jesse froze, terror locking his limbs. Clara raised her hand slowly, mind racing. "Silas, you need me alive," she said carefully. "You said it yourself." He chuckled. "Alive, sure. Doesn't mean you gotta be in one piece." Behind him, more riders emerged, cutting off any hope of escape. For the first time, Clara realized the full depth of the trap. This wasn't about Henry's debt. This was bigger, organized, ruthless. They didn't just want the ranch. They wanted everything Henry had built, everyone he had protected. And she was the last thread tying it all together. A low rumble filled the air. Clara frowned, at first thinking it was thunder. But then the ground shuddered beneath her boots. From the distant mission, a plume of smoke rose, and with it, a second group of riders charging toward the riverbed. Newcomers. One wore a black duster, a silver badge flashing in the sunlight. Another, a tall woman with a Winchester rifle slung across her back. Reinforcements. But were they allies, or another kind of enemy? Gunfire cracked the sky open as the two groups collided in the canyon below. Clara grabbed Jesse's hand and yanked him behind a crumbling rock outcropping. From their high vantage point, she watched the battle unfold, a deadly ballet of smoke, blood, and shouts. The newcomers fought with brutal precision. The woman with the Winchester dropped two of Silas' men before they even realized they were under fire. The man in the black duster, clearly some kind of lawman, waded into the chaos, wielding a double-barreled shotgun like a righteous hammer. For a wild moment, Clara thought, maybe, just maybe, salvation had come. Then she saw it, the black duster's badge, not a sheriff's star, a bounty hunter's mark. Her stomach turned to lead. They weren't here to save her. They were here to collect her. Move, Eli barked, scrambling up the ridge behind her. His face was bloodied, his hat long, gone. If they get hold of you, it's over. Clara didn't need telling twice. She dragged Jessie down the far side of the ridge, out of sight. Half sliding, half falling, toward the rocky ravine below. Eli followed, cursing under his breath. They ran until their lungs burned, weaving through jagged stones and dead trees. No plan, no direction, just raw survival. When they finally collapsed behind a boulder, Clara rounded on Eli. You knew, she accused, chest heaving. You knew they weren't rescuers, I suspected, he said grimly. Same kind of bastards that sold Henry out. I've seen their type before. Jessie slumped beside them, trembling. What do we do now? Clara's mind raced. We head for the mission. Henry left something there, something they want. If we get it first, maybe we can trade for our lives. Eli shook his head. You don't bargain with vultures. They'll kill you the moment they get what they want. Maybe, Clara said, jaw tightening, but I'm not dying on my knees. They reached the ruins by twilight. The old mission loomed like a ghost, walls crumbling, the chapel's cross long since fallen. As they crept inside, the air grew heavy, not just with dust, but with the weight of memory. Henry had been here, had hidden something here. But what? Inside the shattered nave, Jessie found a hidden trapdoor beneath a broken pew. Together they pried it open, revealing a narrow tunnel leading into darkness. Clara lit a lantern. They descended. The tunnel stank of old earth and rot. Rats scurried away from their light. The walls were lined with decayed crates, some empty, some packed with yellowed papers, rotting uniforms, rusted weapons. In a far corner, Clara found a heavy iron box. Inside, ledgers, maps, letters, proof, evidence of illegal operations stretching from Mexico to California. Names, locations, dates. Enough to bring half the territory to its knees. No wonder everyone wanted it. This is it, Eli muttered. This could burn whole empires to the ground and get us all killed, Clara said. A noise echoed down the tunnel. Footsteps. They weren't alone. The bounty hunters had tracked them. Clara snapped the box shut and slung it over her shoulder. Go, go. They sprinted back toward the surface, but a shot rang out, and Jessie cried out, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his fingers. Clara doubled back, grabbed him, and hauled him over her shoulder. He was small, but the weight dragged at her. Eli covered their retreat, firing into the darkness, forcing the bounty hunters to keep their distance. They burst out into the open air, just as the first stars pricked the sky. Clara shoved Jessie into Eli's arms. Get him to cover. What about you? Eli shouted. I'll buy you time. She snapped. Before he could argue, she was already moving, drawing the bounty hunters' fire, leading them away from the wounded boy. Bullets whined past her head. She didn't dare slow down. She ducked into the broken bell tower, heart hammering against her ribs. From here, she could see the whole battlefield. Silas' men regrouping on one side, the bounty hunters on the other. Two devils, both wanting her soul. And not far off, a third threat rising. A dust cloud. More riders. Another, faction. Dear God, how many enemies had Henry made? As she reloaded her revolver, a shadow fell across the doorway. Silas, gun drawn, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, but grinning like the devil himself. Tired of running, girl, he drawled. Clara said nothing. She waited. When he stepped closer, she fired. The bullet struck his gun hand. He howled and dropped the weapon, clutching his wrist. You little... She tackled him. They crashed through the rotten floorboards, falling into the tower's foundations below. Pain exploded through Clara's shoulder, but she forced herself. Up first, Silas reached for a knife. Clara kicked it away. He lunged. They grappled in the dust, brutal and desperate. Silas was stronger, but Clara was faster, smarter, angrier. She drove her knee into his gut, slammed his head into the stone wall. When he slumped, gasping, she grabbed the knife, held it to his throat. Why? She hissed. Why kill Henry? Why come after me? Silas coughed blood. It wasn't me, girl. It was him. Who? He laughed, a terrible, broken sound. Eli. Clara froze. You think he's your savior? He's been playing you since you stepped off that damn train. Clara's mind reeled. No, it couldn't be true. But deep down, a cold, sick part of her knew it made sense. The convenient rescues. The half-truths. The way he always nudged her toward running, toward hiding, instead of fighting back. Footsteps pounded above. Silas shoved her off, disappearing into the shadows. Clara staggered upright, blood and dust streaking her face. Through the broken boards, she saw Eli standing over her, rifle in hand, face grim. I didn't want it to end like this, Clara, he said. But it has to. The broken tower swayed above her, the stone trembling with the distant gunfire. Clara stumbled into the open, her heart pounding a furious rhythm. Dust burned her lungs, and every step sent a fresh pain stabbing through her wounded shoulder. Across the courtyard, Eli leveled his rifle at her. I didn't lie about Henry, he called. He loved you. He wanted you safe. But he knew too much. He was a liability. Clara gritted her teeth. So you killed him. Eli's eyes flashed, anger and regret, battling for dominance. I tried to save him. I warned him to leave it alone. He wouldn't listen. He thought he could fight men like Silas, men like me. The bounty hunters were closing in from one side, Silas's broken gang from another. And now, Clara had no friends left. Only Jessie, wounded and terrified, hidden somewhere among the rocks. You sold us all out, Clara said, voice raw. You never wanted justice. You wanted power. I wanted to survive, Eli roared. Same as you. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to just the two of them, caught in a lethal standoff. Then Jessie screamed, a sharp, terrified cry from across the courtyard. Clara's heart seized. She spun toward the sound and saw Silas dragging Jessie from behind a collapsed wall, a bloody knife pressed against the boy's throat. Drop it, Silas bellowed at Clara. Drop it, or the kid's dead. Eli hesitated, rifle still aimed at Clara. Clara locked eyes with Jessie. The boy's face was pale, blood smeared down his side, but there was a fierce, desperate plea in his gaze. Don't give up. Clara made her choice. She dropped her gun. The revolver hit the dirt with a thud, dust puffing up around it. Silas laughed, low and mean. Good girl. Behind him, Eli moved, fast, a predator closing in. Silas didn't see it coming. At the last second, Clara screamed, drawing Silas's attention, and Eli fired. The bullet struck Silas in the chest. He staggered back, gasping. Jesse broke free, scrambling toward Clara, but Silas, bleeding out, managed one last act of malice. He lunged at Clara, knife flashing. Instinct took over. Clara caught his wrist, twisted hard. The knife clattered to the stones. But Silas didn't go down alone. With a final snarl, he shoved Clara backward, right into Eli's line of fire. The shot rang out. Pain exploded through Clara's side, knocking her off her feet. She hit the ground, hard, gasping, the world spinning. Eli cursed, dropping his rifle, rushing to her side. Clara, Clara, damn it, stay with me. She tried to speak, but only blood bubbled up. Around them, the chaos of the battlefield faded into a terrible, aching silence. I'm sorry, Eli choked out. I didn't want this. I didn't want you hurt. His hands pressed against her wound, desperate, trembling. You killed him, she rasped. Eli shook his head. It was supposed to be different. After Henry was gone, after Silas was dead, it would have been just us. We could have had it all. The ranch, the power. Clara coughed, tasting iron. You don't get it. I never wanted that. Tears streaked Eli's dust-caked face. I wanted you. Clara met his gaze, and for the first time, saw the full weight of his brokenness. Not just a greedy man, but a scared, desperate one. A man who thought he could cheat fate and win her love at the same time. You never knew me, she whispered. His hands faltered, and Clara struck. With her last ounce of strength, she grabbed the fallen knife and drove it into Eli's side. He gasped, eyes wide with shock, then slumped back, blood pooling beneath him. Clara collapsed beside him, her vision dimming. Across the courtyard, Jesse ran to her, falling to his knees, clutching her uninjured arm. Please don't die, he sobbed. Please, Clara, please. She forced her eyes open, forced herself to smile. You're tougher than you think, she whispered. The world tilted. Darkness closed in. For a moment, she thought, maybe this was it, the end of the road. But then strong arms lifted her. She was moving, Jesse dragging her toward the shattered chapel, away from the carnage. Other figures joined, some of the newcomers from the canyon, men and women who had fought Silas men and the bounty hunters, survivors, maybe allies. Clara didn't know. All she knew was Jesse's hand gripping hers, keeping her tethered to life, keeping her tethered to hope. Later, days later maybe, Clara awoke in a bed. Clean sheets, soft bandages wrapped around her ribs. The desert sun slanted through a cracked window, and Jesse sat beside her, reading from one of Henry's ledgers. When he saw her stir, his face lit up with a smile so bright it made her heart ache. You're awake, he cried. Clara managed a weak smile. Yeah, she croaked. Still here. Jesse squeezed her hand. We got the ranch back. Those new folks, they helped. They said Henry wasn't the only one who wanted to build something better. You're not alone anymore. Tears filled Clara's eyes. For the first time since she stepped off that doomed wagon train, she believed it. She wasn't alone, and she wasn't running anymore. Weeks later, the wind still whispered through the burned-out wreckage of the old ranch house. Clara stood on the porch of the new cabin they had started building, nothing more than rough timber and stubborn dreams, and watched the sun sink into a bruised horizon. The land was scarred, but it was still hers. The ranch Henry had dreamed of. It would live again. She touched the scar along her side, a reminder of the bullet that nearly ended her, a reminder of the price of survival. Jesse came running up from the fields, dusty and smiling, his shirt 2 sizes too big, a wooden-handled tool slung over one shoulder. "We got the north fence up," he called. "Well, most of it." Clara chuckled, the sound rusty but real. "That's good. We'll need it." They had no illusions now. The ranch was a target. Always would be. Greedy men would come. Hard winters would test them. The law would turn a blind eye when it suited them. But for the first time in a long time, Clara wasn't afraid. They had survived worse, and they would survive again. Inside the cabin, by the small hearth fire, Clara unfurled one of Henry's old maps. She traced the inked lines, trails, rivers, trade routes, and the hidden marks Henry had left. Smuggling paths, safe houses, names scrawled in hurried shorthand. Henry's legacy wasn't just this land. It was a network of secrets, a web that stretched far beyond this dusty corner of the frontier. And Clara knew someday someone would come looking for it. Someone worse than Silas. Someone who wouldn't just want the ranch. They'd want everything. She folded the map carefully, tucked it into a hidden drawer under the floorboards. Let them come. She was ready now. Later, as the stars burned cold and fierce above them, Clara and Jessie sat outside, sharing a battered blanket and the last of the evening's warmth. Jesse leaned his head against her shoulder, half asleep. "You ever think about leaving?" he mumbled. Clara thought about the train tracks stretching toward distant cities, about places where nobody knew her name, where nobody wanted her dead. She could walk away from all this, start fresh, safe. But as she looked out over the wild, stubborn land, their land, she felt something fierce and steady rise in her chest. "No," she said quietly. "This is where I belong." The stars seemed to pulse in agreement. Jesse yawned, mumbling, "Good, 'cause I don't want to go nowhere." Clara smiled, ruffling his hair. Tomorrow would be another hard day. Fences to mend, water to haul, stock to raise, a life built with blood and grit and hope. But for tonight, they had peace. Far off beyond the low hills, a rider watched the ranch through a spyglass. Scarred hand lowered the glass. A different man than Silas. Smarter, colder. He turned to the others waiting behind him. Hard-eyed men with loaded rifles and dark ambitions. "She doesn't even know what she's sitting on," the man said, voice low and dangerous. He tucked a crumpled wanted poster into his coat. Clara's face printed in rough black ink. "Let her build it up," he said. "We'll take it when she's strong enough to be worth something." They melted back into the night, leaving only hoof prints in the dust. Back at the cabin, Clara lifted her gaze toward the stars. A strange chill prickling her skin. She didn't know why, but she felt it. Storms were coming, and she would be ready, whatever it took.